Let's return to This Week in America. Here's your host, Rick Bratton.
Welcome back, everybody, coast to coast. This Week in America. Janice Romney is an acclaimed speaker, inspirational voice for women. Since 2004, she has mentored women in crisis from spousal partner abuse and taught high school students the risk of teen dating violence. She currently lives in New Mexico. In Beyond the Power of Love, she provides firsthand insight deep into the heart of a disturbing and terrifying world of violence. She shares a journey filled with heartbreaking challenges as she moves from domestic violence. Janice Romney, author of Beyond the Power of Love, A Woman's Journey Through the Betrayal of Spousal Abuse and Her Transformation Through the Power of Love, is our guest on This Week in America. Janice, welcome to the program. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you. It's really great to be here.
This is such an important book, and the book is receiving excellent reviews because it really is helpful to so many people, many going through what you were going through. Let's start by talking about how many victims of abuse there are and what forms of abuse women go through, because some think if I'm not getting beaten on, it's not a form of abuse. Let's first of all talk about the women. How prevalent is this problem?
Well, 1 in every 4 women are victims of abuse, and it's the same as every 24 minutes there is someone, a victim, being abused. So it's extremely prevalent. And I saw that as I traveled around to different high schools. I saw, it was just startling to see how many teenagers were involved in abusive relationships, and they had no idea that they were being abused. Because some of them, like you said, we think of physical as being domestic violence. Okay, so if I'm not being hit or beat up or whatever, then everything else is okay, which in fact, it's not true, not at all.
That's fascinating because, as I said, for so often you will hear people say, I was a victim of abuse and I didn't even know it because it was more verbal. And obviously, you find that when you're out talking to people that it's like, well, wait a minute, I am in an abusive relationship, but since I don't have any marks on me, I really didn't realize it.
Yeah, they do. But, everything that an abuser does is just his power to maintain and control. So they will use any form to make their partners submissive. And, it will involve, the mental abuse is just, it's one of, I would say one of the most that I've heard about, with women is, they're put down constantly. They're not good enough. Who would want them? I mean, it's just from one thing or another where the abuser is just literally tearing them down and making them believe that nobody else would want them. So, mental abuse is right
Yes.
up there.
Janice Romney is our guest on the program, and she's coming to us via Skype from her home in New Mexico. The book is Beyond the Power of Love. You'll find it at readersmagnet.com, the usual places as well. And you can link on by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. I want to talk a little bit about the effects to women and in particular to children as well. Let's use your experience of abuse. What are the impact on women and children? Because it affects everybody in the family as well, doesn't it?
Well, it really does. As for a woman of past, violence, it affects your general, well-being. It deteriorates your health. It just completely destroys the physical body, along with your emotional body, just day by day, because you're always being bombarded, about something, and you're always at fault for everything. And so it's just extremely they're inconsistent. One day everything is fine, and then the next day everything is completely blown out of proportion, and of course you're always the one that's to blame for it.
Let's talk about the children, because the children grow up, they move on to their own relationships. What is the lasting, in fact, let me ask it this way, is there a lasting impact on the child once they are in and see an abusive relationship? Is that a long-term situation they have to deal with?
Absolutely. Mainly because they believe that, abuse is normal. And so many of them go on to repeat the same cycle. They're abusive to their partner. They just they don't have to be a victim of abuse. They only have to watch it, to see it day by day in order to have these psychological problems. It deals with, problems at home, problems at school, depression, anxiety, so many physical ailments that they suffer from, and they're long term. I mean, I've been battling this for, my gosh, I was 24 when I got married. I'm now, 66. I've been battling it all this period of time because, not only, was I abused, but my children were. And so even though I left my abusive husband, I took the children with me, and they had, their own problems. And they usually manifest around about the age of 12. When they really become incorrigible, they can lie, they cheat, it's just a problem that, never seems to end with them. So, there really is a problem with children that, they carry on the traits of the abuser that they've watched, and then they become that person themselves.
Janice Romney is our guest on the program. Her book is Beyond the Power of Love, A Woman's Journey Through Betrayal of Spousal Abuse and Her Transformation Through the Power of Love. We're talking to Janice via Skype. We're doing a video of this, which is up on our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and you'll find it on YouTube as well. Let's talk a little bit about the experiences that you went through, the struggles your children went through as well. You touched on those briefly, but it was very difficult for you to deal with it. And then you're concerned about your children as well. It's sort of like a double situation that you find yourself in, isn't it? You're concerned about you, and you're concerned about the lasting impact this is having on your children.
Right. And at the time that when I finally left after 15 years, and women stay for, various reasons. It's, sometimes it's economic. They don't have, any place to go. They have a, fear of law enforcement. So there's many reasons why a woman, doesn't leave. But, with me, after 15 years, I had a mental breakdown. And in that, because of that, I wasn't able to take care of my children. And they needed help as much as I needed help. So it was just like there was, we were all broken. And my children found their ways to escape the pain that they were feeling. And each one was different. But I had one son who left home when he was age 13 and lived on the streets, became a heroin addict. And no matter how hard we tried, we literally could not help this child. Not from rehab. There was just nothing. And he went through, from the age of 13 all the way up to 32 before he was able to recognize what was going on And thank heavens today he's been sober, he's clean,
Fantastic.
he has a family. But it was just a miracle to see him turn around and, actually live, a normal life. I had problems with my daughter. Um, she was angry at me. I was never there for her. And, she had a valid reason. So we've had to work on our relationship. And it takes honesty, transparency. You need to just, really be able to accept the responsibility, but at the same time, not allow them to abuse you, which my daughter did. She was, she became abusive, but not really in a physical way, but, she definitely did it. There was
Yes.
abusive, what do you call it? Elements to our relationship. And that's taken years to work through. And, it's just, if your children if they're suffering, you're going to suffer. And with me, it just kept going from one child to another one, and so there was never time for me to really do the healing that was necessary. And I lived at a time where, we didn't talk about abuse. It was a secret. We didn't want anybody to know. I didn't know about, crisis centers, about, shelters. I just felt like I was completely alone in the world and there was no way out. There was no place to go and no one that was going to help me get out.
Well, you're there to help people now with your book, and it's a painful story, Beyond the Power of Love by Janice Romney, Romney. You'll find the book at readersmagnet.com, Amazon, all the usual places. If you're going through this, you may think, I can turn to the authorities. That is my escape route. I can go get help. And in the book, you say the legal system failed me. I didn't trust the authorities from the beginning. Talk about that, because the one source you think maybe I can go, they'll listen to me, they'll help me, really wasn't there for you, it sounds like.
No, they weren't. Prior to my marriage, there was a police officer that I only knew briefly, but I went to a party with him and he put something in my drink and drugged me and I was raped. So, I didn't trust them. I was more afraid that they would just make the situation worse. There wasn't, I wasn't about to go to the cops with any of my problems, because a lot of times when you do that, the abuser might be nice for a little while, but you're really going to get it if you return
Yes.
to them. The abuse escalates and it continues to get worse and worse. So leaving is a real scary thing. It's really hard to do. It's really sad, but
it's a
you
reality,
feel like,
obviously. Yeah, it's
Pardon?
reality, obviously, that it is difficult to leave. And how do we go about ending this cycle of abuse? How do we stop it or slow it down?
Well, the only way that we can is to start at the very beginning. Start with young girls. And I was teaching girls that were in high school. So let's say from freshmen, on up to their senior year. But self-esteem is so critical. They have to know, who they are. They have to value who they are and have a real sense of, their own identity. And if we, can do that with these young girls, they're a lot less prone to be at risk of, falling into the traps of an abusive relationship. because a lot of abusers, they're very charming, they're very loving. They listen to your problems. You feel like, wow, he's my knight in shining armor. And actually, they're master manipulators. And this is a real, dangerous type of relationship, um, because they come across as being so kind and so loving, but yet, behind closed doors, they're completely opposite.
Is that one of the reasons women stay with their abuser? The fact that, okay, he says he's going to change. Deep down, he's really a nice guy. He's going through a lot of stress now. Is that one of the reasons women stay with an abuser?
Absolutely. We believe in the promises. We want our marriage to work so bad and don't want to, especially if you have children, you don't want to break up the family unit. And so we believe in the promises. And my ex-husband made many of them. I will never do it again. I'm so sorry. I just had a really bad day at work. This is never going to happen again. And then it happens again, and you still get the same treatment. It goes back to, I'm so sorry. They bring you flowers. They do everything to just, keep you so confused, as to what's real, the reality of the situation. And the reality is that you're being manipulated. You're being controlled. It isn't a marriage of love. It isn't a marriage of, between two people at all. It's just two people that have, the same insecurities, the same sense of low self-esteem.
Yes.
And so we get caught up into abusive relationships due to our lack of, self-identity and self-esteem. So it comes from both ends. Your abuser has low self-esteem, but he wants control. That's going to show that he's not weak. The victim is wanting to be loved. And when she receives a little bit of love, it's like she soaks that in and, trusts that he's not going to do it again. And the next thing, it happens again. And so it's just a cycle. It's a repetitive cycle.
Let's talk about it. Time is going by so quickly. There's so much we could touch on, but it's all in Janice's book, Beyond the Power of Love. Let's talk about some of the greatest challenges that you went through as you were trying to heal from the abuser, leave the abuser and heal from the abuser. And it sounds like it's something that you still struggle with. There are still scars there. It's not as easy as walking out the door, closing the door, and a whole new life begins for you, is it?
No, it's not. It's only the beginning. And because, having a breakdown, the problem was that I became addicted to prescription, medication. And I used that as a manner of coping. And all this time, my children were suffering, but I couldn't see it. I was so immersed in my own, anger and so much pain and so much hurt, because for all those many years of being married, I stuffed every single feeling I had. I didn't count. I didn't matter. I was nothing. I was a nobody. And so when you finally, get in touch with the reality of it, in touch with your own feelings, there's just so much anger that comes out. And, it just takes a lot of work and a lot of therapy. But unfortunately, I didn't have the therapy, and I abused prescription drugs. And that was my way of coping.
Janice Romney, our guest on the program. A couple minutes left, and again, so much to talk about. The book is available at readersmagnet.com. You'll find it at Amazon, the usual places. What was this like for you in sharing this story with everybody? People say they're reading it, they have a tissue standing by as they're reading it because you're so honest in describing what you and your family went through. This goes back to age 5 for you. How difficult was it writing this book, or was it therapeutic? You really needed to write this?
I needed to write it more than anything. I needed a way of healing. And if it was just writing in a journal or, just typing out my story, I needed to get it out. And then as I continued further, it soon turned into a book. But it was extremely healing for me. And the reason that I did it, and I did it so honestly, it was to save another woman from going through the same, path that I did. And when they do see red flags in a relationship, don't ignore them. Those are warning signs. And, you need to be able to walk away. And I would say run as fast as you can run, against a partner that shows any sign of, control, like who you talk to, who you've been with, what you've been eating. All of these things, are warning signs that, you've got an abusive partner.
We've got about a minute or so left here. What do we do when we think somebody, some friend, a family member is suffering? That's always difficult to bring up, and you have to be very delicate, at least we think we do, in bringing it up. And you've mentioned some of the warning signs that we probably should be looking out for. How important is it that we gently, I guess, that's my word, bring it up to someone to make sure they're okay and they're not out there looking for help or should be looking for help?
Well, like you said, it is a very tricky thing because a lot of women are going to, deny it.
Yes.
But I think, just by, being open and truthfully with, your own experiences and try to break down, the barrier when you know that someone is being abused. I just try to break down the barrier by, letting them know that they're not alone and, trying to help them find a way to get safe. But education, is the best key, and, it's the only way of prevention. And so that's why speaking to the youth is so important, because that's, they're just they're at the very beginning, of the dating. And, if we can stop the violence at that point, then we can end the generational cycle of abuse, because it is generational. It's passed down from, one family to another. And then hopefully, my family might be one that will completely break free and we won't continue the same pattern. It's always a work in progress. It's always something that I'm aware of. And, I try very hard to speak, especially to my sons. I have 5 boys. And, talk to them about how important it is to show respect, to be loving and, to treat their wife as though, they were the most important, person in the world to them. Because it's really hard to break that cycle.
Well, you were helping so much by sharing your story. The book is so well done. It's a great resource. It will guide you through if you're a victim, if you know of someone who's a victim, if you want to help someone who's a victim. The book is Beyond the Power of Love, A Woman's Journey Through Betrayal of Spousal Abuse and Her Transformation Through the Power of Love by Janice Romney. You'll find the book at readersmagnet.com. You'll find it at Amazon, the usual places. Go to our website. You can link on, get information there as well. Janice, a pleasure having you on the program. Thank you for sharing the story. You're doing excellent work in getting the message out there and sharing your story. It's been a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Janice Romney is the author of the book Beyond the Power of Love. You'll find it at readersmagnet.com, the usual places. Back on today's program right after these messages.
This Week in America is online. You can visit our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Scott Pinkerton, associate producer of This Week in America. Jay Anderson, segment producer. Ben Watson, webmaster. Otto Bechet, director of engineering and TV production. This Week in America produced and is a trademark of Blue Funk Broadcasting, LLC. For information on all of our guests and to listen to this week's show, our website again at thisweekinamerica.us. And I'm Sean Bratton, executive producer of This Week in America.